Just don't know if I know how yet.
I think, let me see. I think I can do it too. I just pressed a button. I think I can do it. So
if you hit the mute button on your phone, it will mute you.
Okay. So my question was on fixation, because I have a 9-year-old who is really intense. And so when he's joyful, he's intense about it. And when he's not, and he tends to get fixated on something. Maybe that's not the right term. But I feel like there's got to be a link between the mindfulness and being fixated. And I don't know where that is. I don't know how to like connect the two in a positive way. And I feel like my techniques for air quotes helping him with that tend to be lead us more to a negative place. And I mean, that's just one example of where I see what I would call fixation in my life. It happens with myself and with my husband and with my dogs. And so I just thought, I know someone who would know about this.
All right. Well, I think it's a fabulous question because it affects things in every arena, so to speak, whether it's writing arena, life arena. Well, I guess that's about all there is. But, and you're right too, that there's definitely a connection between mindfulness and obsessive thoughts, thought fixation, however you would like to term that. And one of the things that you can help Avery with, I think, is recognizing when he first starts to get uncomfortable. And of course, in a mindful state, when we're really connected in our mind and body, when we're able to feel our feet on the floor, when we're able to be aware of what's happening in our bodies, that is where we might have him, especially because he's so young, start to identify, something doesn't quite feel right in my stomach or my chest, or I feel bouncy on the inside. And so I think a great thing to do for him, and of course for us in any type of situation, is to really recognize when we're first starting to move out of balance. And we can only think one thought at a time. So then you can kind of help him to identify, all right, well, what are you thinking about? And most of the time he'll be thinking, I'm guessing that something bad is going to happen. And so if you can, it's harder to change a thought than it is to think a new thought. So if he's worried, say, obviously I'm going to make something up, but if he's worried because nobody's going to sit with him at lunch at school, then, and it isn't possible to move him to, well, maybe you could find somebody else that looks like they don't want to sit by themselves and sit with them. Of course, remember that'll be harder to do, especially when his anxiety is increasing, because when our emotions are high, our thinking goes low, and vice versa. So what we want to do is help him get back to a more balanced place. And so you can tell him something like, I understand why this would be bothering you so much, but for a little while, let's take a break from that and think about going out to play with the dogs, or what is his latest thing? It's not American Ninja anymore. It's something else. But, let's think about this for a little while. And then when he's back to, being his joyful, bouncy self, that's when, it might be possible to have a different discussion about how to address the situation that was causing him anxiety in the first place. And as far as mom patience, all of those things about trying to keep your cup as full as you can and being able to release the tension, the stress, anxiety, and recharge, the more that you keep yourself balance, the easier it is. Of course, 3 young ones and a busy husband and all of the other things, not easier said than done, but some of how you manage things, of course, your kids are going to pick up on too. And sometimes just admitting, you know what, I feel pretty stressed right now. Can we take a break from this and do something else? Or I feel pretty stressed right now. Can you quit pretending that the pots and pans are drums, please? Some way to make everything be just a little less energetic. I think that might be helpful.
Yeah, those are all great suggestions, and I think you're right. Redirecting and helping to sort out the emotion that's causing the fixation. He gets especially fixated on video games, and then his father told him he needs to do chores to earn video games. So then he's obsessed with what chores he can do to get the video game privilege. And it's like it's really great in theory, but in practice, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what you can do. Like, I have to do that myself. So, so just to redirect and send them in a different direction.
And because he is so kinesthetic too. I mean, most of the time kids are, but I think he even more so. Once he identifies that one task, is it something that you could go send him to start?
I can't even come up with the tasks sometimes, and that's probably goes back to like not recharging myself, I guess. But once he has a task, he's fine. But if he's undirected, then he just gets obsessed and keeps circling. And what can I do to help you, Mom? Which is so sweet. But then I'm like, I don't know. Just leave me alone for 5 minutes.
Well, yes.
Not
And
ideal.
he's a thought, right? If you don't
Right.
direct it, it's going to swirl and go in whatever direction the energy is flowing. So, so your little thought boy there, but, and I think, this is, of course, we're talking mostly about Avery and helping you out too, but it's such a great example of dealing with anxious thoughts in any given moment or subject. And since you know that this is one area where this happens, you might make a list of jobs when he's not hounding you. And, like right now, we could even help you. Maybe he could, and you could have some on there that are very self-serving for you and just like, I need you a little bit away out of my space. I need to be able to think. I need to be able to function. I need to be able to cook dinner. You could have him do something like, okay, make sure all the page numbers in this book are numbered correctly. So that he can.
Yeah, I like that. That would keep him busy.
Or
go through the Bible.
There you go. Are all the pieces here to this puzzle? But you can also, of course, do some more constructive things, like if you still need that little time, if you're, doing something with Hadley, helping Bryn with something, whatever it is, well, maybe if he could sweep the floor, or maybe he could, I don't know, whatever chores that you might age appropriately have your kids do that will either help you a little bit or at least give you that space. Of course, you don't want to send them to do something that then you're going to be anxious because, well, in trying to do this, they made this mess.
Right.
And do you use check sheets or charts at all with him?
I don't. They would like it if I did, but I'm not that organized.
Well, it doesn't have to be that big of a deal. It could even just be the list of jobs that you want him to be able to see, so that, because if he gets to pick one, it'll that could go in either direction, I think. But if you give him a few choices, if he's already getting a little anxious, he might not be able to make up his mind. So be prepared that, okay, I can let you choose if you will, and watch if that brings his anxiety down because he feels like he has a little more influence in the situation. Or if he,
Okay.
because, you know, you can tell when he's starting to spiral, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can just say, okay, look, and the more, that's okay. The more cues that you give him, oh, I can tell that this is a tough decision for you. Why don't I help you make it? Or why don't you tell me if you'd rather be in the living room or the kitchen? You know, so that you can model to him, how can I break things down in smaller steps and then be able to follow that trail back to a better feeling place.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm just muting and unmuting myself so you don't hear my thoughts all the time. But yeah, those are all very good. I'm writing all this down so it won't just fly out of my ear when I'm done with it. So thank you. Yeah, that's all very
Well,
good.
see, and the beauty of this is I actually am recording it, so you can just listen to the recording if
Oh, there you go.
writing it down is getting to
Maybe
be.
I'll make him listen to it.
You could do that. I think we've used appropriate language and
So far, so good.
okay. Yeah. And does are there any other aspects of that question that pertain to you we could help you with, or
Well, I guess I'm curious if you're dealing with an anxious horse or an anxious dog. Obviously, my anxious horse has passed, but how would you transfer that when you can't communicate necessarily verbally or make a list for your dog? Or like, how does that transfer behaviorally, I guess?
so if you're working with a horse who is exhibiting signs of anxiety?
Yeah. Or like my horse used to get obsessed on one side of the arena. He couldn't go past it without eyeballing it and spooking half the time. And is that considered fixation?
You know, I think it could be. I haven't really thought of it or heard it framed in that way, but I think that it absolutely could be the same thing. And I think one of the things that I would do if I were working with a horse that had that area of the arena that the monsters lived in, I would start where I had his focus and attention. And he wasn't, he wasn't giving off some of those signals of tension, whether his head would be starting to rise, ears focusing really hard on something, eyes hard, body kind of tight. So I would take him to a place where he was safe and relaxed, kind of like what we do with Jewel, right, Janice? And make sure that we start from that place where he feels safe, and I can tell that he's feeling safe by how he's engaging with me. You know, he's paying attention. If you move in front of him in his eyesight, he kind of follows you, might even walk towards you. And then I would try to expand that place of security, so that by kind of softening the edges and growing that place of security, it makes the scary place smaller by default. And oftentimes I don't think, back when I was more taught, well, you just have to keep pushing them past that place in the arena where they're scared. You would tackle it head on and force them through it rather than softening the edges and making the safe place bigger. And I think that with my dog, that gives me a lot of those examples. We had one yesterday because we had a a wonderful visitor. Dave came over and was fixing something in my backyard, and I had just taken Zook for a walk. I brought him in the house, and he had his dog in the truck, and Lexi asked if she could put Sadie on a leash and run around in the backyard with her. And I was like, okay, didn't think to say, all right, but can you stay away from the windows at least? And so, my dog was pretty excited that or actually I think, I don't know exactly that I would say he was scared, but somewhere I think he's interpreted that type of thing as a threat. And so what I did was arm myself with reinforcements, because food works well to help him focus and get calm. I got him to where he could look at me, because once they moved out of sight a little bit, he brought his focus back to me. And then I gave him little jobs that he could do that he knew well, and rewarded him for every time that he tried that. And I also rewarded him every time he took his attention from what was bothering him and gave it back to me. So I think, working again in that place of, I can't, when we get anxious or mad or upset, when we're not leading from that gentle strength or that place of calm, we're going to fuel any fire that are going on in any of our anxious humans or critters. So it's okay to back up and take a break. And like, an easier example, we'll start with Avery and then move to it. But if he's to a point where he can't think and you're to a point where you can't think, you might say, okay, we each need a timeout for 3 minutes to give yourselves an opportunity to calm. And sometimes with our animals, I think being able to do that too, because we can get frustrated with ourselves sometimes because we can't help them. Or I can own that myself. I can get frustrated with myself because I can't help them. But at the same time, being disappointed in what I feel that I can't do, it's going to make the situation even worse. So giving ourselves permission to experiment and, let the learning curve be big. We have to, we think about when you were in kindergarten and you first learned to color with those big fat crayons, so we're going to have to do big fat crayons for a while until we see a little bit of evidence of success, and we can expand it from there.
Yeah, that's really good. I think one of my struggles is anxiety over my, like you said, like my lack of ability to be a good leader or come from a gentle angle. If I'm walking my dogs and I feel like something scary, for lack of a better term, is coming, I feel like I tense up and then I'm not able to help them. I'm making the situation worse because, like you said, you're fueling the fire, not helping to put it out. And so then I make myself anxious because I'm anxious about my inabilities. And then I'm like, well, I can't do anything now because it's like a give up spot.
Mm-hmm. So what is it that you're scared they're going to get loose? Is it scared they're going to, what is the underlying big concern? And I'm not saying it's not valid, I'm saying it is, but what is it?
Yeah. Well, I think with horses, it would be that they would get out of control, or that, like, if I'm helping a child with a horse, that I would put someone in danger. With my dogs, it would be just that they would not act in a way that I like, because I have 2 tiny little dogs. So I'm not worried that they're going to viciously take someone down, but I want my kids and my dogs to behave in a way that I'm proud of and that is good. And I think at this point my instincts are just wrong. Like you said, when the horse has a scary spot in the arena, my instinct is put a chain on their nose, pull them over to that scary spot, walk them back and forth 12 times until they behave themselves. Don't let them get away with it. Yank on their face when they act up. And now, that I know a more gentle approach, I'm like, that's so wrong. But that's absolutely what I would have done, 15 years ago when it was my problem, I think.
Well, I think the only reason, Lindsay, that you would have done that is because you were taught that, right?
I think so. I would hope that wouldn't just be my reaction, but
Well, I highly doubt. I mean, when you fell in love with horses, did you really even know a chain existed?
No.
Okay. So
No, but even at like the therapeutic riding where I volunteer, they put a chain on every horse's face.
yeah, we're working on that. But just trying to point out to you that what your go-to is a learned behavior. And so you can kind of go through the process of unlearning. And one of the first things in this, I keep kind of going back to this idea of how mindset is so important to these adventures, because knowing your parents and knowing mine too, I can completely relate. Children, animals should behave in a certain way, and that is a reflection of us, right? And so kind of opening that up a little bit and recognizing that, okay, it might get a little sloppy sometimes. And we can tell a lot more where the edges are if we allow some of that messiness.
Okay.
And so, to be able, and of course when you're working to keep somebody else safe, it becomes a little bit different issue. There's more pressure on there. But giving yourself permission that if I am trying to walk my dog somewhere or lead my horse somewhere or ride my horse somewhere, and the great thing is when you start to give yourself permission like that, you're going to notice more things that happen within them. You might notice their body tighten more. You might notice different eye blinks in the horse. You'll start to notice where horses or dogs' ears are focusing. And that in itself, remember, is a little bit of mindfulness, because you're keeping yourself in the present moment by noticing those reactions in the other. And so again, when I first start to notice that something is getting a little bit stressed in their physiology, I'm going to back off, or I'm going to take them back to that place of safety. And that's, of course it takes practice, and it in some ways it's taking on a lot more personal responsibility for how they're reacting to their environment or reacting to us. So in some ways it's more challenging, I think, because you have to have, the patience and the perseverance. But when you look at extending those invitations and letting the other make a choice, it gives them the freedom to claim a victory too, which is a victory for us. So is it concrete enough? Is that making sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's, again, one of those things I feel like I should have been able to figure out, and I'm very grateful to you to have been able to put it into words for me that makes so much sense.
Well, and I mean, thank you, and I appreciate it, but you have all the pieces in there. But whenever we're in a situation, remember, with how we're wired, we can't see it clearly, especially when we're emotionally involved. And with how deeply you love your kids and your animals, you're not going to be able to see it clearly. It takes a little bit of an external mirror or some external influence to be able to make that situation kind of massage it into a different direction or a little bit different form. But if you think about how brave are you to ask the question, to come on the call, and now we're talking about it. I think that gets a lot of credit for courage.
Well, thank you, and thank you for giving me the opportunity and taking the time.
Well, absolutely. Is there any other edges of that question or anything else that we can talk about?
I don't know. I really like what you brought up and what you clarified. And let me look here, see if I can come up with something. So you said it's harder to change a thought than it is to have a new thought. So what's a gentle way? This is my word for being 35. I'm going to be more of a gentle person. So what's a gentle way to encourage new thoughts? Because I think a lot of my new thoughts are a little harsh.
Well, of course, those new introducing those thoughts like to Avery or having them yourself?
Probably more helping others.
Okay. Well, but there again, having to think about, leading them on this trail of thought choice will help you too.
For
And
sure.
you might even start with, okay, so Avery, you're feeling pretty stressed. Would you rather feel anxious or calm? And then hopefully he will say calm. Okay, well, would you rather feel bouncy on the inside or smooth? And so kind of just giving him a couple easy things to make a choice of will start switching, the blood being from the back of his brain in the limbic system to the front to the frontal cortex or prefrontal, whatever it is. And then when he starts there, you can say, all right, so what thoughts, when you think of being happy, what do you think of doing? Or do you think of celebrating a birthday party? Or do you think of cleaning the bathroom? You can then kind of get a little silly with it, but not too silly, because he'll be in that, his arousal will still be a little high. And so he'll take into the joy part, but that's not that that's wrong, but you still won't have helped him recognize how to calm himself down, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think, and even just giving him those which would you rather, that helps set the neural pathways for choice too, because you're giving him a choice. Okay, if you could feel this way or this way, which would you pick?
Okay.
And so when you start to feel, or what happens on the inside for you when he starts to escalate?
I think I probably start to anticipate, negative behavior, or just him. I mean, he doesn't like throw fits or anything. He's just, unhappy. Obviously, we all want our kids and our dogs and our horses to be happy. So when he's not happy, then I want to help him to be happy. But I'm obviously not going to like buy him a new toy every time he's bummed about something or seems anxious. Can't afford that. So I guess I feel like then it's my responsibility to help to make it right for him, or help him make it right for himself.
Yes, and I think, going back to the idea of lists a little bit, kind of like when I had my education to be a teacher, one of the things that they showed us was, if you, especially in elementary school, well, it's probably, but I was an elementary phys ed teacher, if you enlist the kids in making up the classroom rules, then they'll buy into them. And not necessarily saying you need to make more rules, but if you talk to him about, all right, so what helps you feel more comfortable, or what helps you feel happier? And he's going to come up with some things, basically, because you'll say, all right, after he says, going to Target and picking out a toy, and you could say, okay, and what else? And so he'll be able to tell you some of those things, or give you some clues, and then you can kind of lead him to that. But I'm willing to bet he knows a lot of stuff. And I really think that having a go-to list for these times when we feel that our emotions are running quite high, cheat sheets are good.
Yeah.
And this time it doesn't matter if any teachers catch you because you're the teacher. So, yep, just more opportunity to be creative.
Yes, definitely.
Well, cool. Anything
Yes.
else? Yeah.
No, thank you. That is all really awesome stuff.
Well, you're very welcome. All right. So, Janice or Liz, any questions?
Sorry. Do you want me to mute that? They're wrestling.
If it would help you feel better and you could pay attention more, then go ahead and mute yourself.
Okay.
I don't have any questions right now. Do you, Liz?
No. I just keep kind of sinking it all in and like trying to relate it back to things, but
Mm-hmm.
and just like self-management, I think, more than equine. So
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that the more that I learn about, stepping into that gentle strength of leadership and offering choice and all of those things, the more I feel like I have to take personal responsibility for maintaining my state and being aware of what's happening with my horse or my kid or my dog, because it's real easy to go into the just jamming to get things done, because that's how I was taught in a lot of areas of how to deal with misbehavior, or how to deal with others working things out for themselves. And I think even just when I was teaching school, you had to make a lot of rules and use a lot of boxes so that you could keep a large number of kids safe. And there wasn't a lot of room for kids to experiment. Oh, what happens, if I throw this thing across the room? Well, you could injure somebody, so let's not do that. But I mean, really, that's kind of a legitimate thing for a kid to try. But it's not saying that any of that is wrong, but the more that we offer choice to others and consequently ourselves, it's not, you have to go back to the drawing board a lot, because it's not necessarily what we have in place is our habitual pattern.
Yeah, it's a lot of work to change your natural instinct or your natural pattern that you're used to doing. It's a lot more work to say, what if I don't say no to that? What if we talked about why that maybe wouldn't be okay, or maybe it would be okay, and I learned to not need to control that. At least for me it is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I'm getting more and more excited about offering kind of a group coaching program on mindset, because it seems like almost everything goes right back to that.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Agreed.
But there's a lot of material on why a mindset is effective, or how that, but there's not always a lot of, well, how do you navigate through changing it?
yeah, there's not a lot out there about bridging the gap between where you are and where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there can be a big kind of gap transition, you know, when you have an intention, but then for it actually to come into a reality, you know, setting an intention of approaching things differently, because there's, you know, there's some hardwiring that kind of needs to be recognized and, you know, consistently applied until that becomes the default, as opposed to what maybe, you know, like what I've done for the past 35, 40 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or my whole life. You know, in some instances, there's going to be some behaviors that started as a child and they worked, and you don't even realize there might be something better or a different way. And I think Kim and I, we've had this discussion where I think a lot of what I've recognized is I have a lot of reactions as opposed to responses. And when I respond and take that pause, a lot of things just are easier. Mm-hmm. So it's not really a resistance to that easier. It's just taking the time to recognize it, you know, to take the time to pause, to have that occur to me. And I'm not at that point where that's my default yet. So it takes I think it takes for me some repetition, you know, just like any habit. To me, it's a habit to change.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think not only are we swimming upstream sometimes with whatever we've got programmed inside, but we're swimming upstream because I think we have I don't know if I would say a compliance-based society, or, you know, there's rules and things should look this way and they should be this way and they should go this way. And
Mm-hmm.
it's, you know, we're bucking up against a lot of systems when we say, well, what if? And all right. And, you know, I can't think of an animal one right offhand, but, you know, you have your toddler in Target throwing a temper tantrum. You get lots of looks from people, and I'm sure lots of opinions. Sometimes they'll even share those opinions graciously with you.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, being able to calm that overstimulated toddler and let them make a choice, it's going to take a lot of emotional presence for us. And if we feel that pressure from somebody else that we're not doing the right thing, and, you know, would we shut our kid up because they're annoying? You know, it's really hard to gracefully navigate a change like that with so many external pressures.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I've ever dealt with something like that.
Oh,
I'm just
yeah,
over here relating a lot to this.
Yeah, I can remember, even though mine are, you know, much older, boy, I can still remember some of those highlight reels.
Well, in all fairness, it didn't happen that often in a store because I avoided them a lot. But, you know, recognizing where that, like the horse, where is the edge of trouble, you know, and, oh crap, well, I really need something and I don't have anybody else to watch her, so we're going in. But it's all just kind of trying to balance on a teeter board, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think when you have a goal and then you see all the things you're doing, not necessarily wrong, but that don't align with your goal, it can feel so overwhelming. And like you said, there's not a manual to get from here to here. There's just where you want to be or where you are now. So having these like things that I can do while I'm in the moment to try to not just give up on the whole process, that's really, really valuable to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it is a process. It's not, you know, it's hard to make it a scorecard so much because you don't get points in most games for attempts. You get points for actual goals.
Right.
And I think even we can give ourselves more goals by recognizing those those small shifts and changes. And we probably, all of us can do much better at that when we don't have so much external pressure. Critical voices need to go to timeout.
I agree. You're supposed to have all the training done before you go to Target, but you can't train until you're there, right? So
Yeah.
it's tough.
Yeah.
Or the horse show or the dog park.
Oh my gosh, I have a lot of feelings about dog parks.
Talk about getting people's unsolicited opinions.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, well, yeah, and it's, that's another thing too, that not saying necessarily that there's a lot of people out there with bad opinions, but there are a lot of people out there with opinions that aren't congruent with how I want to do things.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems in my world, the more incongruent they are, the more they feel they want to share it.
Mm-hmm.
Except
Sure.
like stuff like this, I think obviously we're all on the same page about things, and very humbly willing to admit that we're works in progress and trying to figure this out. And sometimes there's a lot of experimenting, and we might even do a lot of experiments we aren't going to choose to do again.
Right. But how awesome that you bring us all together and let us relate to one another.
Yeah. Well, gotta work on that, right? Because I think, again, the more even little meetings like this, or the opportunity to listen to something that makes a lot of sense, even if, okay, well, I haven't quite figured out how to put this in place here. Because of course, it's much easier to brainstorm and talk about these things because we don't have, well, okay, Lindsay, maybe you have a little bit of animal or child influence with you, but we're able to explore the ideas without that critical pressure, or the I don't know what we call the we're taking out the compliance factor for us and for whomever we're working with.
Yes, it's nice to not be tested at the moment that we're talking about our techniques or our questions on the process.
Right, because the very pressure of being tested will make it almost impossible to display a new behavior. I mean,
that's interesting, because I can totally, like, that statement rings very true to me, but I don't think I've ever heard it said before.
So see, you knew it at some deep level.
Yeah.
It resonated.
Yeah.
So, and that's, of course, how we can help fill ourselves up too, is more of those moments and ideas that resonate with our heart.
Mhm.
She agrees. That's okay.
Yeah.
Brilliance. She knows brilliance.
Well, they kind of do, don't they?
They do. Yeah.
She's pretty good at letting you know what she wants and what she doesn't want.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
She hasn't yet learned to pretend that she doesn't want what she wants to make you happy.
That's true. She doesn't usually worry about making me happy at all.
Oh, you might be surprised.
She does make me happy, though.
Mm-hmm. Well, in all of the individuals that we were speaking of, of course we know how much happiness they bring to you, but when we see them get upset and we feel like we don't have enough tools to fix it, then we get upset too. And when we get upset, it's easy to yell or to get frustrated. it doesn't matter that we're more frustrated with ourselves. It just all comes out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like watching Blue today with the cat. I'll tell this one little story. You know, we've been working a lot with Blue to help him, I guess, to help him be able to maintain a relaxed state. Well, I don't know if we ever really got there, but getting as close to it as we can. And I've noticed at times that he will go after cats. He'll pin his ears and run after them. And in the past couple months, when I've been hanging out with him a lot to try to earn his trust and make friends with him, there's been a couple times where there was, you know, a cat, either Tink or Socks, would walk through and he'd be going towards it, and I'd be like, okay, just keep breathing, because if I get tight, I'm likely to add fire to the situation. I'm just going to trust that this cat can take care of themselves. And when he didn't have that same pressure on him, he didn't go after the cat. He might just kind of sniff it or look at it. And today, so it was kind of a suspicion, but today I got a blatant that was it, because I was in a stall and I had kind of invited Blue to come in too, which he's very untrustworthy of entering into a closed space with a human. And so Socks was outside of the stall kind of messing around, and a couple times Blue sniffed at him or looked at him, and there was no ear pinning, there was no going after the cat. And then the cat came in the stall, and Blue took a couple steps slowly in the stall, and then he pinned his ears and went after the cat. So, you know, his reaction to that cat, to something on the outside, definitely changed when the internal pressure rose for him. So it was, I think, just one of those validations about how important it is, best that we can, to take care of ourselves and do things that take our stress level down. So
Thank you, Blue.
yeah, he's
And Socks,
good
because he's
teacher.
participating too. And you for sharing it.
Well, so I love sharing those stories.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of layer and depth that kind of interweaves to, you know, a lot of the things that we talk about or we're applying.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep. But I think for me, it's very cool and exciting that horses can teach us so much, and my dog too, that circles around and can help me in the rest of my life, and then can help other people in whatever areas they choose also.
Mm-hmm.
Just another one of those gracious aspects of horses.
Yes, I love these stories that you have, because I feel like there are a lot of crowds where people would be like, okay, what? You know, but I feel like you helped me to understand that sometimes these interactions are more than nothing or have significance, and you could take something away from it. And it's great to have other people who can appreciate that rather than just think that it's kind of weird, you know, that you care. So thank you for sharing those stories and what they mean to you.
Oh, well, you're very welcome.
Mm-hmm. Well.
All right. Well, anybody else, since we've kind of made a full circle about choices and mindset and experimenting behaviors, options, any other final questions, comments?
I like the encouragement that, you know, gets shared because I was when she was talking about kids and little ones, and I heard it, I was remembering a post about, like when babies are first starting to learn how to walk, right? We don't, the first time they bobble, we don't say, oh, that's it, done walking, don't even try anymore, right? We're all excited and encouraging, and it's like, yeah, why don't I apply that to myself when I'm trying something new? Or, instead of, oh, you didn't get it the first time, it's like, oh, well, yeah, you tried. So I think that encouraging, taking that different type of perspective, even as an adult learner, right? And that helps kind of take the pressure off and open up other avenues and possibilities. I think it helps bring up energy as well. So,
I totally agree.
Yeah. So thank those little ones. They're good teachers.
Yep, they sure are. All right, well, I guess should wrap it up. The sun is still shining. Maybe we should go outside a little bit.
Yep. My dogs are looking at me like, is it time to go for the...
You can't say the word, can you?
Oh my gosh, because then they're like, now, like a minute ago.
I can definitely relate to that. I have to spell it. And pretty soon I am convinced he's going to start spelling the word too.
Oh, yes, he will.
All right. Well, thank you, ladies, for being on the call today, for joining me in some pretty cool discussion, and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Everybody.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.